The big problem we're faced with in the United States, just to give you a case in point, and I don't think you're quite faced with in Canada or Quebec, is that now Americans are becoming bothered, terribly bothered. But the traditional good old Marxist, Leninist, socialist, Maoist, left, Trotskyist, Stalinist, that left is only used to the centralized state. People are demanding more power. They want to place limitation on congressional terms, that you can't, they want to kick everybody out of, practically everybody office now because of the bank scandal that you must have read about. I can't, I have so much to say. The people want to move right now, and they're moving, they could move potentially in a more and more decentralist and confederalist direction. But that wretched debris, that detritus that remains from the 1960s, alas, with its now having gone into the academy and becoming professors, with all due respect to the professors around here, and now turning from students into the very professors they fought when they were young, and telling exactly those students what their professors told them 30 years ago that they shouldn't do. That detritus that remains around here has to be shed. And a movement has to be created that can countervail this and can now begin, when they turn over into bed, to prevent the right from taking it over. Because what's happening in the United States is that exactly socialism is identified with the nation-state and centralization. The breakup of the so-called Soviet Empire, it was never one anyway, but an empire it was, has made many people recognize that there is something wrong with the traditional left. What has to be recreated now, if you want to call it a new left, or you want to call it a new movement, or whatever you want to call it, has to be confederal, and it has to appeal exactly to people at a time when the right is using these very decentralist arguments to establish racist organizations, to establish semi-fascistic organizations. One thinks, for example, of the Lombardy League in northern Italy, which is beginning to take over cities in Italy, gaining, 20% of the Milano?
Brescia.
Huh?
In Brescia.
In where?
In Brescia.
In Brescia, 20%. And you know who they're promoting? Proudhon. They literally study Proudhon. And they're racists, and they're semi-fascists. And what they're calling right now is for the decentralization of Italy into a Lombardy League, basically of German origin, which will keep these Sicilian southern Arabs, or North Africans, as the very expression used, out of Lombardy or the northern Italian cities. And what's happening is that the socialists and the communists and the otherists can't address that. You know why? They believe in the nation-state. They believe in the dictatorship of the proletariat, or if they modified it, they turned it into one or another form of statism. So the right is taking over. The David Dukes in the United States, the Pat Buchanans, too much government. Give power back to the people. America first, and then afterward, America's Northern European, and let's get rid of everybody else. You see what's happening? So one of the greatest failures is that, stuck as we are with a statist conception of socialism, it becomes impossible to advance a decentralist confederal form. If I were to talk about confederation at the Socialist Scholars Conference, they'd look at me and say, what has that got to do with Marxism? And they're right, it doesn't. Marx was a statist, avowedly so. He wanted the unification of Germany and the development of nation states. And Lenin was even worse. So what are we going to say? There's the problem. That's why we need something, a movement, that will free itself, unshackle itself from that Marxist statist position, that will be communitarian in its outlook, and will be not right-wing, but left-wing in its direction. Otherwise, what I'm talking about right now, is going to be accepted 50%. And you know by whom? By the right. And we're already seeing among Greens ecofascism. We're seeing among Greens and ecologists right-wingers, people who are working with the capitalist system, and people who very significantly are working with the centralist ideas, the way the Lombardy League in Italy is working with. This is a very serious problem. That is what has me more frightened.